A very warm welcome for everyone for attending the Industry Transformation Asia Pacific ITAP Connect session. My name is Emily and I'm your host for today. This program was created in collaboration with SAP to address how process manufacturers can gain a competitive advantage in driving business value. Team Unlocking the Full Value of Industry 4.0 in Process Manufacturing. Attendees will learn from this session on the use of intelligent manufacturing to drive new revenue streams. Here are a few housekeeping rules before we proceed further. If you have any question for the speakers, please post it on the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen, and our speakers will get back to you as soon as they can. Next, please answer some poll questions which will be popping up on your screen shortly. While you're filling out the form, allow me to introduce you to the first session of today. This opening interview on enabling success in process manufacturing amid a volatile global landscape is a conversation between Raymond Krishnan, President of the Logistics and Supply Chain Management Society, and Sam Castro, Senior Director, Solution Management Line of Business Digital Manufacturing of SAP. Raymond and Sam will provide the audience with insights into key trends and challenges in process manufacturing, as well as the role of intelligent technologies in enabling new ways to generate revenue streams and solve business problems. Over to you, gentlemen.
Hi everyone, my name is Raymond Krishnan and from the Logistics and Supply Chain Management Society based in Singapore. And today I'm going to be talking to Sam Castro. He's Senior Director, Solutions Management, Line of Business Manufacturing. And we're quite fortunate to have Sam with us today. He's based in Philadelphia in Pennsylvania. So given the time zones, we're quite appreciative that Sam, you've taken some time out of your day to be with us. So what we're going to be talking about for the next few minutes is enabling success in process manufacturing amid a volatile global landscape. And given what we've seen this last couple of years, we can certainly attest to that. Doing business today is very volatile, but the focus today is going to be talking around operations and how this impacts the manufacturing or manufacturing companies. So great to have you here with us today, Sam. Maybe you can start off with a brief introduction about yourself and what you do at SAP to provide some insights around the direction we're going to be taking this morning.
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks for having me, Raymond. I appreciate the opportunity to talk with everyone here today. I'm part of our line of business manufacturing team. So what solution management's responsibility is around guidance of strategy. So we provide an overview of the different market trends, business needs, business hurdles, and technology changes in the landscape that are causing disruption, but also causing issues from a technical debt perspective for the manufacturing level and organizations across the globe. My specific area of focus is on the analytics, process MES, and operations and controls. It happens to be my background. I come from the services OT side of the house, SCADA, DCS, PLC, setup controls, integration work, automation setup in work, as well as bringing that to light, right? The reporting and the analytics that come off of that. So that's where I started my career a long time ago on the services side at the manufacturing floor layer, but worked my way through to the strategy, design, development side.
Yeah, so great. Thanks for that. I like what you said about guidance or strategy. A lot of us are very focused on working in the business, but we don't work on the business. So given the breadth and coverage SAP has globally across multiple manufacturing environments, are there 2 or 3 trends and challenges in process manufacturing that you're seeing today?
Yeah, for sure. And a lot of it has to do with technical debt that's just been, accrued over the years, and we look at, how long an MES has been in place for a company, right? And how many pieces are homegrown on top of it and how much customization has been layered in at just the manufacturing layer, right? And not to add to the mix, but also you see, work that's been done on the quality management side, work that's been done on asset reliability, work that's done on the planning and the recipe and design work that's done with the suppliers, right? So all the stuff that's ancillary or, surrounding the manufacturing operations themselves, has a lot of its own technical debt and its own legacy on top of it. So, when we start to talk about modifying or changing or keeping things fresh at the execution core side, it takes a little bit of time to work your way through all those other pieces to really get to that execution core. And that seems to be, the big hurdle for companies to have to overcome at the manufacturing layer to really take advantage of an updated process, some automation, additional automation, some additional data capture and visibility, and pulling that in with the context of everything else that's going on around the manufacturing floor as well. So that seems to be, our big focus, even on the SAP side, for us to tackle, and it's one that our customers are really demanding from us these days.
So it's not just about what happens on the line itself, but all the ancillary or the supporting activities around it that feed the line and the outputs of the line as well. I mean, the entire supply chain, yeah?
Yeah, that's right. In the way that operations views it, a lot of the times we see, swivel chair kind of integration, meaning somebody's looking at one screen, then they turn the chair and they look at another, and then they turn their chair and they look at another, or they kind of flip between a lot of different applications. And then if they go to another location or another site, again, new set of applications, new set of screens, different process, different equipment, right, and automation config, and that adds to the complexity overall, right? A lot of depth there to maintain that standardization, standard report, standard process.
It's closer to the truth that I'd like to admit. Swivel chair operation was literally just this week in a facility, multi-billion-dollar business. Global corporation, but running operations today with a swivel chair operation. So you had an operator looking at one screen for one set of information, taking that data and keying it into another monitor or computer sitting on her right, just updating that information. Literally, no RPA, no simple, more straightforward implementations of technologies like that. So talking about intelligent technologies, what role does intelligent technologies play to help address some of these challenges? Maybe we could start with that.
Yeah, for sure. Well, first off, the role is initially understanding the business case to invest in the technology right up front, right? So you really have to understand what the impact of a new technology like cloud or like an edge compute would have, on the manufacturing layer. What's the current technical debt that you have? What are the systems in place, and what can this environment actually bring to bear, and what value does it provide? A lot of it has to do around looking at how software is maintained and managed, how the platform is maintained for you, the infrastructure around it, updates that occur every quarter, right? So you're able to just take advantage of these updates that are just being managed for you. So the way that we see it on the SAP side is long gone are the days of an MES that's 5 years old, right? That doesn't happen anymore. It's a continuously updated, managed process that IT really doesn't have to take a burden of debt in bringing it to light, right? So we're able to take advantage of these capabilities right away. But with that comes the very first question that I always get. If you run it in a cloud environment, how is that reliable for the plant, right? One of the big things, concerns that plants have is disconnected operations. They have to be highly reliable and low latency, right? High visibility. They have to provide always on, right? They can't just have a system that just goes out because the network is out for one day, because they had an electrical storm or something, and now you can't run the plant. That doesn't work. So looking at the technologies around edge and the way that we federate out the application itself, the user experience, customizations and extensions of that user experience to really personalize it for operations so that it's concise, right? And it's very small. So we can have these very clean, simplified views that do a lot of things behind the scenes, but that the operations team doesn't really have to go through a lot of hoops to get the job done. They can focus on the work that they need to do rather than the system that's burdening them with data entry.
So we talked about technical debt a couple of times already, right? And how some of these intelligent technologies can help bring us up to speed. but what about using intelligent technologies to enable ways in which we generate revenues? So to build on that, bringing us up to speed, repaying that debt, if you like, but also bringing us to the level where we can generate new revenue streams along what we do.
Yeah, so moving off the technical burden and the technology side of value, right, that the IT side would see, and into what the business would see. The good question, right? So what's the value that the business is going to see on the other end of this? Well, it starts with standards, and what standards bring to the table, right? When you look at an industry standard architecture, ISA 95 from a discrete production side, containerization, or an ISA 88 when you look at the the site, process area, process cell, process unit, those kinds of constructs. When you can define that at a central layer and you can run operations off of that commonly, right, across multiple different sites in multiple geographies, multiple product lines, it means that you can start to understand the bigger picture of value for the plants. You can start to understand the bigger picture of opportunity as well, right? We can look at your historical losses. We can look at your overall equipment effectiveness. We can look at that deviation from the plan, where things didn't quite go to plan, and we can look at why. And we can look at that, not just why for a singular location, but we can look at it across all geographies for a product line. And we can start to understand why a flagship product, one that's in high demand that we can barely produce enough, is experiencing these losses. And we can go, all right, well, it's interesting. We can look in the rear view. We can see where we were. We can see what got us to where we are now. And OEE is really good at that. But now we can take and overlay a consensus demand forecast, right? We can look and project out, just because we produced, X amount of, let's say 1,000 gallons of material A in the past, in the last quarter, doesn't mean we're going to produce 1,000 gallons in the next quarter. Maybe we're going to produce 10,000 gallons, or maybe we're only going to produce 100. Yeah. But knowing that will help guide you at a business layer to what kind of losses you can expect going forward for the different materials, for the different product lines, and start to identify the hotspots for investment, right? What's the cost of doing nothing, right? What kind of losses will I expect if I don't invest here? And if I can improve my yield, if I can reduce scrap, if I can improve my ability to adhere to the original production schedule, right? Based on labor or material shortage or whatever variance is being is causing production to deviate. If we can reduce that, what does that actually mean for overall margin, overall profitability of the organization end to end? So we can really start to look at a bigger picture, decision maker level, top down, and understand and have that guiding light of where we want to take the organization.
So for the people listening in today, what you say makes perfect sense, right? Can you give us a couple of customer examples so to make it a bit more tangible, a bit more understandable for us?
Yeah, for sure. So we'll do one on the discrete side real quick, and then we'll move over into the process industry side too. So on the discrete side, we have a couple of different organizations that were looking to streamline the way that they were able to deliver components to an automotive manufacturer, actually multiple different automotive manufacturers. So they're an automotive supplier. They stamp doors, and they have multiple press operations that are running, that are changing with every product line for the cars, right? So as new cars are introduced every year, and throughout the year, they have different demand based on accidents that happen, right? So they have parts replacement, or they also have their own mix that changes daily within the assembly lines in the factories that they're supplying to. So they need to make sure that the dies are delivering proper spec when they need it. They need to make sure that if they're expecting a huge demand for the summer, for let's say summer type vehicles, the ones that have convertible tops, things like that, those parts often midsummer become high demand for whatever, for multiple different reasons. So they need to make sure that things are in good working order so that they can meet that demand and capture that value for their organization, right? So understanding what that forecast looks like, understanding how manufacturing is going to meet that capacity, meet that demand, and of good quality right the first time, and be very effective about staffing at the right time and having the right supply at the right time as well. So that's an important piece for their organization, is that coordination with an ever-changing plant, because it is based on actual customer demand almost directly. When we move into the process side, I see a wide range here. We have things on the chemical side that have been run on a SCADA controls DCS screen and some paper. And they're just trying to modernize the paper-based process that they have and move off of pen and paper, which, seems, you laugh, but it's, if you walk into many plants, the use of, let's say, disconnected tools, like a pen and paper or like, a homegrown application locked in a box, is very common. It's just always been the way that it was done. And it's just, difficult to change a process that works, right?
But when let's not forget spreadsheets.
Yeah, well, that's another, you can do whatever you want in that, right? And a lot of people love that, but at the same time, you can do whatever you want in that, right? So it gets a little scary from a standardization of process, right? And how information gets reported and how information gets lost along the way, right? Oh, well, we only need to report this little bit, so that's all we're going to report, right? And that disconnect, changes the way financial sees the operation side of it, and it also changes the way the organization values, the plant and the facility. So being able to fulfill, the quality management aspect, the asset reliability, counters, predictive asset, utilization metrics on reliability and forecasted utilization of capacities and material flows, inventory supply, what's being consumed. Is that what's being consumed, being pushed off as a byproduct somewhere? And do we have this byproduct that was off spec, but we can use it somehow? Or, and understanding that inventory live means that your customer delivery times, your yields are all going to improve, and so will your customer satisfaction. And that's a very key part to that coordination between operations and logistics and plan. And, obviously the reliability and quality are ways to improve that efficiency through the, to adhere to that plan.
I like how you just mentioned inventory and the relation to logistics and supply chain. Yeah, I guess given my background, this is going to be an obvious question, but also reinforced lately with the prominence and relevance of supply chain issues that we're seeing these last couple of years. And everyone's blaming COVID for it regardless, right? So how are manufacturers applying some of these digital technologies in their supply chains specifically?
Yeah, so when we look at how we're supporting these customers, right, we're able to turn on, this environment for organizations to see right away, right? We can provision a tenant, in a matter of hours that they can start to use, and they can start to integrate into their already configured ERP backend. So we have some predefined integration on the SAP ERP side that means that manufacturing definition isn't from scratch. Right, every traditional level 3 system that you've set up in the past, it means that you have to define a shift, you have to define the plant, you have to define the bill of materials, a capacity, right, and the different routes and flow. You have to define all these different master data and how the transactional data is going to interact with it from scratch. But you don't have to do that anymore. We can stand up the environment and pull in your predefined set of information for manufacturing right away and start using that. We use that for the taxonomy, we use that for the production process and the efficiency of the plan and the process definition according to plan, in addition to providing the hooks and the standard screens for reporting production. And that,
giving us sorry, Sam, so giving us that full visibility, yeah, rather than just looking at discrete functions and working on different platforms. So just in the interest of time, we could keep talking about this and going back and forth the whole day. 30-second or a minute spiel. What should organizations that want to continue down this journey, not just start, but continue down this journey? What's the key takeaway that you have for us today?
Yeah, challenge your IT organization. Challenge your IT organization to really take a good hard look at cloud, and not to just dismiss the value that a managed service can provide without worrying about disrupting your operations. Okay, that's the gauntlet to throw down for sure.
So that's fantastic. That's a very good point. I like that. Thanks a lot, Sam. So we've come to the end of our session. This is a precursor, as many of you would know, to ITAP, which is Industrial Transformation Asia Pacific. And that's the region's premier B2B trade event on industrial manufacturing 4.0 and manufacturing technology. SAP is a partner, and so is the Logistics and Supply Chain Management Society. And it's going to be taking place on the 18th to the 20th of October this year. It's going to be a hybrid event, physical at the Singapore Expo, halls 2 and 3. And we look forward to it being a successful event. With that, Sam, thank you very much for your time today. Like I said, we could keep talking for the next couple of hours. I still have more questions for you. Thank you very much. Take care and speak to you soon.
Great. Thanks, Raymond. I appreciate your time today.
Ciao.
Hello, everyone, and welcome again to the ITAP Connect series and to this web engagement session on unlocking the value of Industry 4.0 in process manufacturing. I'm Malachy Martin, and I head up Intelligent Asset and Service Management and Industry 4.0 for SAP Digital Supply Chain in APJ. Thanks to Sam and Raymond for that great and engaging interview. There is no doubt that there are lots of challenges and trends with respect to the impacts on process manufacturing at the moment. And it is good to get some insights as to how technology is helping to address that. I'm excited now to host the panel session here around accelerating the journey of Industry 4.0 for sustainable manufacturing and sustainable enterprise. And I'm delighted to have an esteemed panel with me today. I'm joined by Susanna Hasenerl, who is our head of APJ Sustainability. She's our inaugural head, actually, within SAP. And Susanna is focused on driving zero waste, zero emissions, and zero inequality as part of our mission within sustainability. And Susanna has a very deep background in sustainability and acts as a global speaker as well in terms of climate change and impact. We're also joined by Kendall Nicholas from Lion in Australia. Kendall is heading up the digital strategy around all aspects of the digital supply chain within Lion. And I'm looking forward to hearing some insights in particular about how Lion has been impacted and how they're making decisions around not just existing technology, but how they can leverage emerging technologies as well to impact their investments and align to their business strategy. We're joined by Hari Narayanan from ITC in India. ITC in India in particular for Hari represents the largest paper factory in India. And Hari will be talking to us about how they've been leveraging Industry 4.0 for the last 2 or 3 years and how they've been able to take digital innovation and impact all of their production processes. And we'll get to hear of some of the key outcomes they've seen from that. Finally, Stephen Lesser is here with me on the panel as well. Stephen is bringing effectively the partner angle to this. Stephen's from Tag and Track, is one of our SAP.io partnerships. SAP invests through .io in partnerships that are effectively going to expand the capabilities of our solutions, but also bring startup solutions into this game and help us to target a lot more with innovation, some of the key aspects that are being looked for by our customers. So thank you everyone for joining me today on the panel. I'm super excited to have everyone here, and we'll look forward to getting some insights and some details from you. So before we start the panel formally, as was mentioned earlier by Emily from Constellar, the Q&A function is available should any of you have any questions. And I have a couple of colleagues who assure me they're watching this event and answering my questions for me should any pop up. So if we don't manage to answer the questions that come up, or if you have other areas that you need to see covered, of course, you can feel free to reach out to us, but we will follow back and answer any and every question that we possibly can, okay? So the key theme today, as I mentioned, of the panel is around accelerating the journey towards Industry 4.0 and intelligent and sustainable manufacturing, okay? So I guess in my first question, I'd like to turn to Susanna here. And Susanna, certainly from my point of view, sustainability is something that's been around forever. I think everyone on this call, everyone watching, and perhaps all of us in our personal lives and our business lives are being impacted by sustainability. And we all probably have a view as to what that actually is, right? But I'm curious to understand in the context of the technologies and manufacturing, and in particular supply chain, how do we see sustainability impacting the supply chain? And I guess in that context, are we seeing customers, the environment, and all of these stories coming together to actually make us think of new business models, perhaps to accommodate that? So maybe it's a long question, but hopefully you can give us an idea.
Yeah, thanks, Malaki, for that. I'd like to start tackling this from the demand side, so consumer side in particular. McKinsey analysis shows that consumer products that are more sustainable actually are experiencing growth rates that are 5 to 6 times those of their competitors that are less sustainable. So and also across Asia, we certainly see this kind of developments in a number of segments. I think this trend is perhaps not as pronounced as it is in Europe or in the US, but certainly there are markets and products where we see this. Obviously, affordability is a big topic here in Asia. And if you look at many of the more sustainable choices, they often come with at a premium. For instance, in the spectrum of food manufacturing or production, organic foods often are much more expensive and they are not affordable to everyone. But if I tackle this from another perspective that you also addressed, regulatory pressures, we certainly see that grip tightening here in Asia as well. However, we have to recognize that there are some bigger forces in play, especially the policies, including trade policies of the European Union and US as well. What I'd like to highlight here in particular is the European Union's carbon border adjustment mechanism that will require the importers of, for instance, aluminium, steel, fertilizer, and so on, to disclose their carbon emissions from the supply chain. That becomes effective in early next year. And then in 2026, those importers that haven't paid carbon taxes in the countries where those goods were produced will need to start paying those towards the European Union. And we are talking about billions of dollars here as a tax burden. So it's really quite significant. And I mean, if we look at the region here, we also have some, I would say, landmark developments here. Singapore government announcing the raising of the carbon tax from what is currently 5 Singapore dollars a ton to $80 by 2030. So that's quite significant. And also the climate disclosure expectations are rising. For instance, Japan starting to require companies to do this in accordance with the task force on TCFD framework, which is quite a popular one, and also more countries are moving into that framework. So indeed, there are a lot of these external factors that are affecting manufacturers. Consumer demand is just one, but the regulation is tightening its grip.
Yeah, thanks for that. I mean, it is interesting. I think we all watched COP26 last year. We were all hearing about these carbon taxes, etc. But I think when it starts to impact us all, and obviously you mentioned Singapore, where the three of us, for example, live, it'll be interesting to see how much more seriously companies take it. Turning to you, Kendall, really what I'm quite curious about, and I'm sure everyone's fed up talking about the pandemic in one sense, but just a little an aside, when I was telling Kendall the types of questions I'd ask her, I mentioned I'd ask her this next question, and she was saying, well, are you only interviewing me on this panel? Am I going to have the whole session to answer that? So Kendall, let's just dive straight into it. You know, during the pandemic, there have obviously been serious challenges on the supply chain, and I'd be curious, I guess, to understand what were the main challenges faced by Lion, but perhaps could you give the audience an idea, were there any positive side effects where in effect it helped you to drive a different approach to business in that context? So maybe you could let the audience have your views on that.
Yeah, not a problem. Thanks for having me this afternoon. If I probably reflect on 2020, it was a really challenging year for our business for multiple reasons. We had really just moved forward with the go live of our S/4HANA implementation in our Australia business after sort of a 2-year pause of deploying in our New Zealand organisation. And about 6 weeks before go live, we were hit with a really large scale cyber attack. So we'd pretty much diverted all of our core resources to work on, the recovery efforts around that. But I think the silver lining coming off the back of that and experiencing the pandemic, it really made us have a really good look at understanding our supply base and utilising the core ERP system for its intended purpose of really trying to understand the full end-to-end supply chain. We really didn't have a great understanding of, really where some of our materials are being sourced from. Yes, we had contracts, we had supplier relationships, but we hadn't spent the time to understand the data and the importance of having all of that in one central source. We had close to 750 applications in our technical landscape prior to our digital transformation to S4. Post that, we've still got maybe 150, but we've got an architecture and a landscape where we've got a much better understanding of that holistic environment. We have a level of technical integration through our Purdue automation pyramid where we've done a deep core level of automation integration from shop floor right up into SAP using the MII Manufacturing Integration Intelligence Suite. Had lots of conversation with Sam Castro over the last few years, working through that digital transformation strategy. And really, I think the big hindsight for us was, we made a big investment deploying SAP. We worked through our business processes, and we really wanted to get a better understanding as, where was the big value drivers for us, and getting clear understanding as to what technical aspects of our solution we're executing where the ownership of that sat, what the maintenance model looked like. And something that the panelists spoke about earlier, which was getting really good strategic relationships with your IT business partners so that you have a really agile process around continuous improvement and maintaining the technical solution. So it's probably a long-winded answer to what was important for us.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. And I guess as I turn to Harry, I mean, Harry, when Kendall talks about Lion and Lion being a global beverage company, and we can probably align our heads around how that all works in a supply chain context and Industry 4 and all of these intelligent technologies. But when we switch over to ITC and we switch towards the pulp and paper industry, I know certainly, I guess in my immature sense, I would think pulp, paper, trees, sustainability, but maybe you could help us understand, how does Industry 4.0 affect your industry? In particular, you've been working on it for the last couple of years, and also perhaps how you've been able to gain process efficiencies as a result of that.
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. It's my pleasure to join all of you in this discussion. And I am sitting here as a user of Industry 4.0. And after implementing it for the last couple of years, we are got benefited not only on the top line, we got benefited in the bottom line as well. Just one line on the ITC. ITC is one company diversified into various businesses, including hotels, FMCG goods, pulp and paper, and also into a lot of other specialty products. One specific thing about pulp and paper is it's very capital intense industry. For setting up a paper machine line, it costs not less than $150 million. In that background, it is very important for us to ensure that the productivity and reliability is ensured all the time to ensure the return on the investment. And we are one of the pioneers in implementing some of the shop floor automation, SCADA, PLC. Also, we have an SAP sitting on the top, integrating all those things. But it all came to some level of plateauing over the last couple of decades. So what is the next X curve for us to improve our performance? Then we thought of leveraging on Industry 4.0, which is again helped us in connecting all the devices together and to make the data available to the people, right data at the right time to the right people. And ITC also in the corporate level, our chairman has made a vision next for ITC on leveraging digital for the next, as a next level of growth. So in our paper industry, mainly we focus IoT sensors, the advanced analytics, image analytics. All those things have immensely helped us in improving the product quality, the throughput improvement, and also some of the fine tuning, something like the shade management in the paper machine, closed loop control systems. All those things have immensely helped us in improving the operational efficiencies in the manufacturing area.
Yeah, that's super. I mean, by the way, for the audience, I didn't actually pay Harry to use all the right buzzwords. He's using literally all the words that that we see in this Industry 4.0 space, IoT, those types of things, sensors, and I think that's in a way helps me to turn easily to Stephen for my next question. Stephen represents one of our partners. There's a session immediately after this panel where I'll be talking more directly to Stephen around Tag and Track and what they actually do. But I guess, Stephen, perhaps it would be good for us to understand in terms of the emerging technologies, and in particular, the area that Tag and Track is working in. You know, how are we seeing these impacting sustainability? And maybe you could give a couple of examples for the audience.
Sure, I'd be happy to. And thank you for inviting me to the panel. It's a great comment so far. And regarding sustainable improvements within intelligent manufacturing, I'll talk on three. First, with regards to carbon footprint, you know, it's well known that transportation tends to be the largest contributor of emissions, and anything that a manufacturer can do within their supply chain to optimize transportation can have significant impact. And that can come in a variety of forms. And if you're using devices to monitor location and condition throughout your supply chain, then you get a better understanding of where your product is and how best to utilize that positioning. So for instance, that could go to mode selection, where maybe you can shift more to ocean freight versus air freight. It can also go to terms of moving towards full loads versus partial loads. We had one client who had problems in terms of syncing up their air freight with their transportation shipments. And so they were sending partial loads. But by getting real-time information off of the truck, as well as real-time information in terms of when the air freight shipment was departing, they could redirect partial loads to the end destination in order to run a full load. So anything that you can do to reduce the amount of transportation you're utilizing will have a corresponding impact on carbon footprint. Secondly, on waste, it's just from a planning perspective, it's great when you know what to produce. And in the case of using sensors and to understand condition and location of your product downstream, you can understand really when replenishment needs to occur. Instead of focusing on historical reorder points, you can be looking at what is moving, and especially over the last 18 months with disruption, you'd be looking at issues related to is my product sitting in a port and deteriorating? Do I need to produce more? Or it's fine, I don't need to build more. So waste is another area in terms of, and then finally, what's less talked about is on the human rights side, where if generally when you manufacture, produce, and ship, you find out when the customer receives it and you're satisfied. Now, by tracking it through the supply chain, you can understand what channel it's actually going through. Is it following what you've agreed upon? Is it compliant to what you've stated through the various regulatory authorities? And that can help you. So between human rights compliance to waste minimization and carbon footprint impact, those are just a few ways that you can impact it with intelligent manufacturing.
Oh, that's cool. And thanks very much for that. And again, I think, Kendall, coming back to you, I mean, one area that Stephen touched on there was carbon footprint management. And I know organizations we're working with at SAP, like Lion, are considering how do they monitor, measure, and report on their carbon footprint. Okay, you talked about the journey, the digital transformation, and some of the products that SAP has been helping you with over the last few years. But I'm just wondering, how is the sustainability agenda actually impacting on Lion? And how are you looking at what I call intelligent technologies to help you leverage information and insights to drive that?
Yeah, thank you. I think one of the interesting things for us to look at is the scope 1, 2, and 3 emissions, and we're obviously owned by a Japanese parent company, Kirin. So, you know, some of the things that the earlier speaker spoke about, you know, are cascaded to us as a bit of a put that, you know, these are the things that are important to us, so therefore they're also important to your business as a consequence. We made a call a couple of years ago that we wanted to be Australia's first carbon neutral brewer, which we were sort of successful to get to last year. We won the Banksia Award only a few weeks ago, and a lot of that has really been part of a longer term strategy for us to pull together a sustainable supply chain strategy that will enable us to understand all the parts of the data that we need to gather to be able to get to that neutrality process across sort of our entire product range. But SAP's product carbon footprint or the new product footprint management tool has really been a game changer for us, because, you know, one of the major investments with putting in the core ERP was giving us full visibility across our materials, our bills of materials, understanding, you know, I guess all of the materials that make up the core parts of our SKUs, taking it to the next level, and then being able to understand the emissions factors and those right the way through the life cycles for us to be able to gain access to that information and automate the process. It was a bit of a no-brainer for us to sort of understand, you know, how can we better utilize the strategic partnerships that we have with SAP to capitalize the existing investments that we already have and utilize a lot of that core data that sits within the ERP system to take it to the next level, and then start having bigger conversations with, you know, our suppliers and our customers to sort of say, these are the things that are important to Lion, therefore we would like you to think about them as part of your supply chain. And for some of the smaller suppliers that maybe don't have the level of capital investment or the understanding, we offer them capability and services that we have access to that can help them on their journey. So it's a bit of a win-win situation for both of us. But probably the most important insight for us has really just been trying to get an understanding of where all the data sits and how we gain access to it and have a central source of truth to help us move to that longer term strategy.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. And I think when you pull back the layers and you start to get into, you know, where are we sourcing our goods from? Who are our suppliers? Are they in effect being sustainable? What's their carbon footprint as well? It's really important, I think, to be able, as you say, to pull the data from the right sources and to leverage that data in order to drive the right insights. I think, Harry, coming back to you, you talked earlier about Industry 4, you talked about the impacts around manufacturing and process efficiencies for ITC. You know, Stephen mentioned when he was talking earlier about 3 key areas, and I know we all talk about waste, we all talk about climate and carbon footprint, but I sometimes don't see us all talking about the inequalities and the people impact. Out of curiosity, when you've been implementing Industry 4 in ITC, were there any other areas outside of the typical manufacturing scope, for example, where you saw benefits from implementing sustainability solutions? Maybe you could perhaps share a couple of the use cases that you've managed to get in that regard.
Yes, Martin, very, very interesting. And in case of use cases, we have almost close to 50 plus use cases over the last 3 years. Because now the data is available to the shop floor people, to the area manager level people. So they all keep creating their own dashboard, how they would like to monitor their performance and improve the efficiency. The biggest important aspect of this, we have gone ahead in setting up the data historian, wherein the concept of golden batch has been derived. So any grade which has to meet some specific quality, which even earlier speakers also were talking about, it is very easy for the operator at the shop floor to go back to the best batch what he produced, probably the last month, probably the couple of weeks back in the C shift. So he need not flip back through the logbooks, a lot of hard copies, and now in my system it is available to him. If he is taking a product X, in the monitor it displays that this is the bandwidth in which he needs to measure, control the process parameters, and he is adhering 100% or 90%, and based on that only some parameters he need to control. Otherwise, he is not sure which, out of 100 plus parameters in a paper machine, which one he need to control. So the golden batch concept, what we call for every specific grade, Even if there is a variation in my input raw material property, I have a golden batch to suit the raw material property. So that helps us in conserving resources, which again lead to sustainability, preserving chemicals, and also minimizing losses. One more thing I would like to say is any process industry, there is something called a plateauing effect. If I keep dosing some chemical for bleaching or for some brightness improvement, beyond a certain point, it is not going to give you any benefit. Only the additional chemical is getting onto the process. So by virtue of this data analysis and understanding, now the shop floor people are very much aware that beyond certain dosage, it is not going to help me. So I need to look something else into my process. So in manufacturing, it is it's a very good advantage for us to implement this golden batch concept across our paper machines and across our pulp mill, wherein we are able to leverage substantially on productivity, quality, as well as loss reduction. If I have one more minute, I will just talk about a scenario other than manufacturing, because as Martin mentioned, we have a lot of dependency on plantations where we do our own wood pulp, which is renewable. Unlike any other industry, pulp is renewable. We plant trees, and our raw material is the tree what we have planted. In plantation, there is a mist chamber wherein we grew the clones of lakhs of millions of saplings we produce. When we make the saplings, the mist chamber is supposed to have some specific levels of temperature, humidity, and the wind quality of the air, ambience, everything. So now today, it's all automated with the IoT sensors over the last 2 years. We have automatic measurement of temperature. We have automatic measurement of the relative humidity, based on which the sprinkler system will start, or the exhaust fan will run, or the input that will run. So right from starting the clone, we have a very robust way of growing up the clones. And when it is going to farmer's place, there also we have some way of automatically understanding the climate properties, the pH of the soil. Based on that, we prescribe them some fertilizers which will improve his productivity, which in turn help to the larger society. Also, one is that on plantation. Second thing is on manufacturing. Third thing is on reliability engineering. Probably engineering area where the equipment efficiency and reliability is one of the topmost parameters. We have a lot of sensors which do the condition monitoring of the equipments and which gives SMS alert. If I am sitting here also, if some vibration on a blower is going up, or a turbine is getting overheated, the SMS comes to the concerned person, and he can attend it in a timely manner without any breakdowns. So these things are helping us phenomenally, and the bottom line benefit is around 230 basis points. We improved our margins over the last 2 years only on account of digital initiatives. So I'm very happy and proud to say that in a forum. So that is for now. Yeah.
Thank you, Hari. I mean, that is fantastic. And I think every time I hear passionate people like yourself and Kendall talking about how technology is making a difference, how you're able to drive efficiencies and bottom line, I think in particular, it makes me very excited, because I think these technologies are coming finally to the fore, and they're actually being leveraged to help not just your industries, but also help the planet. So I think, Susanna, that final angle that Hari had there around hitting the bottom line, all right? I mean, everybody's keen on leveraging technology. Everybody's keen on impacting sustainability. Everyone's keen on a resilient, intelligent enterprise, as we talk about at SAP. But can you be sustainable and profitable? I mean, I know it's a difficult question to answer in just a session like this, but can these solutions, and therefore changes in sustainability, can it lead and help organizations to become profitable? Can they make money from it?
Absolutely. A recent Accenture research shows that companies that perform well along the ESG criteria, so environmental, social, and governance related, actually outperform their peers by a factor of 3.7 over 7 years. So I think that answer is very clear. Increasingly, sustainability is becoming the success recipe for many, many businesses, including manufacturing. But I would actually like to next take you to the next level of that. How do we improve even further? As we've heard, you perhaps already done certain things within your own premises. So how to improve the profitability and sustainability even more? Well, the answer lies in networks, in the business networks that you're part of, the business ecosystem. And I'd like to share with you a little bit more about Catena X. Catena X is an automotive industry network that was born some time ago. And the trigger point for that were the supply disruptions that the automotive industry started to experience in the earlier days of the pandemic. And the problem was that the supply disruptions started to appear, but the OEMs, especially who were buying the bulk of the goods and the components, didn't really know how to tackle that, how to deal with that, because even the biggest OEMs had just visibility into the first or second tier suppliers, whereas the automotive supply chain is very complex and very deep. And because of the lack of transparency, people just didn't know how to remedy the situation. So it became very clear for the automotive industry that not just in order to flourish, but to survive, they needed to collaborate. And that's why this data exchange network was set up between the various players in the automotive industry. And now we have a lot of the premium players, even competitors, joining forces there because they knew they couldn't survive without it. So one of the initial use cases of that industry business network, a data exchange network, where companies can exchange data in an open, yet safe and well-governed manner, was traceability. But now we're definitely beyond it. And one of the key use cases is the carbon footprint. So without having a full visibility over the carbon footprint at the various nodes of that network, how can you optimize it? I mean, you can optimize it based on the visibility that you have, but we have big systemic problems, systemic issues, and we need to take a systemic network-based approach on solving those. And the requirement for that is data transparency across that network and shared among the participants of that network. SAP is a founding member in Catena X, and we're also developing similar networks across other industries. If you were in Sydney a couple of weeks back, I actually shared the stage there with PHP, who shared their vision of a fully transparent end-to-end value chain. So this would include both the inbound as well as their outbound value chains. And one of the key use cases thereafter is the carbon data exchange. And at SAP, we fully share that vision and want to invite any of you who are in those value chains to collaborate with us on that.
Yeah. That's super, Susanna. Very good. The Catena story amazes me every time I hear it. I think it's fantastic, and I think the key thing for me is collaboration. And without collaboration, there's no way we're going to be able to solve these problems. And I think you touched again there on the data aspect of it. I know that Kendall had mentioned getting understanding of all the different data aspects across all of the different suppliers, and I think what you're hinting at there again is the fact that this collaborative network of suppliers who are bringing this data together is going to be really important. And I think, again, the more openness we have, the more sharing we have, I think we really have an opportunity to drive the right outcomes. So I have certainly really enjoyed today's conversation. I certainly learned a lot. In particular, Harry, some of the stuff you're talking about was very interesting and around the paper and pulp side of things. And I think the key thing for me, if we think back to Sam and Raymond's discussion at the start, and also then some of the key areas that are coming up here, is that there really is an opportunity now. And I think finally the technologies, we're catching up with the technologies, I guess, as opposed to the technologies catching up with us, and that we can now leverage this. And as long as we can leverage the data and we can collaborate better, I think there is genuinely an opportunity to deliver. And within SAP, we talk about design to operate or design to consume. And I think when we touch every single aspect of that within the designing, the planning, the manufacturing, the delivering, and the operation and consumption of the products. And then if we look at the loop back from that, so what happens next? So in the sustainability context, how do we become more circular? How do we build in the reverse logistics and really push all of this material back into the value chain. I think the technology has finally arrived, and Industry 4.0 and intelligent technology is really driving these outcomes. So thank you so much to all of the panelists. I've been absolutely delighted to be able to share this panel with you today. And I just wanted to double check on the questions. I think the majority of the questions have already been answered by my colleagues, which is good. But basically, from the point of view, I think there was one question that related specifically around the context of byproducts or waste materials, and how we can look at how Industry 4.0 can actually tag into those as well. But I think there are, I'll take the question offline, because there are quite a few examples where we have customers who, in particular, for example, I'm sure Kendall would align to this in her industry, where byproducts of, for example, beverage manufacture are feeding their way into the food chain, as it were, perhaps in some angles, and working their way back. I know certainly of one example I heard of globally, where a craft beer manufacturer had been able to take the spent grains and feed them to animals, and that came back through a food chain in a restaurant that they ran on their plant, for example. So I mean, it is interesting that these angles are there, and I think the traceability and the visibility that we gain through the data insights is really what's about helping us to be able to drive the best outcomes from that. So really, from that point of view, I just want to double check and make sure I've covered everything I was meant to cover. But before we leave the panel, has anybody got any final comments or anything they want to share just before we close it out? I'll just leave it open to the audience and to the panel in particular. Is there anything extra you want to mention?
Yeah, probably there was a question to me on is your digital transformation fully complete? And how long did you take to reach here? Okay, it's a very interesting question. Just to answer it quickly, we need to have some background of data availability or systems. In our case, we have a robust DCS control systems in our paper machine and all our PLC control systems, and we have a MES, manufacturing execution system, on the top. On the top of it, we have a SAP, we have APOs, we have BIs. So when all those systems are in place, it is easy for us to integrate that with the last bit of Industry 4.0, your IoT sensors and the other ways and means of picking up data and putting it together. We also went ahead in having a data historian, wherein we collate and give the right data stitching. There has to be a time factor for that. So the data historian helps you to put the right data stitching together and to the right person. And also we need to have a robust, strong team of people, because ultimately they are the people who are going to do. So in our company, we have set up a Center of Excellence for Industry 4.0. There is a group of people who are constantly looking only on this, enabling the user departments to leverage on Industry 4.0. So this team leverages the shop floor people to get into identify the use cases which business is asking for, and they will do the marriage between the technology, IT, OT, and the technology. So it's only a beginning, and we need to have put focused effort in terms of resources, infrastructure, and also the technology to get into the next level of Industry 4.0. But it is going to be definitely an interesting journey.
Excellent. Thank you, Harry. Thank you for taking that question. So I think we're pretty close to the time on the panel. As I said, I've really enjoyed today's panel. I'd like to say thank you to Susanna, to Kendall, to Harry, and to Stephen for the very valuable insights and for being so open in your sharing. So I look forward, hopefully, to working more closely with all of you as we move forward. We're going to have a second quick poll now. But please stay tuned, because I'll be having a more detailed session with Stephen from Tag and Track in order to understand a little bit more about the company and perhaps how we can see how that solution and its platform can be leveraged to drive better outcomes. So we're going to be doing that in our partner showcase. So I look forward to having that discussion with Stephen right now. So thanks again, Stephen. I mean, it's great to have you supporting us today, and it's great for us driving an SAP angle. It's great for us to have our customers on board talking about how they're leveraging solutions. And what's exciting for me is when we bring the partners to the story as well. Now, obviously, our .io venture is all around partnering with startups, about driving them as extensions to our solution portfolio and being able to bring them to our customers to help them in their delivery. But perhaps what I didn't do in the introduction, because I wanted you to do it now, maybe you could give a couple of minutes, just general introduction on Tag and Track.
Thank you. Thank you. We take our partnerships seriously, so we appreciate being here. And we go beyond just matching shirts. We do more partnership from a technology standpoint. So, Tag and Track is a real-time visibility and traceability system. So we provide tags and labels with sensors embedded that allow data to be gathered. Now, that data can be transmitted via Bluetooth through gateways that then go to the cloud, or they can go directly to the cloud through cellular. Now, this information is collected in the cloud and then becomes visible to customers to evaluate, review, analyze, and make decisions through this digital platform that's available to them. And that information can also be directly integrated back into SAP to then provide that information to the various decision processes. So that's what Tag and Track is all about.
Okay, cool. And I probably know the answer, but for the benefit of the audience, what problem is Tag and Track trying to solve?
Yeah, good question. When we look at historically how is information being gathered, there's information that's occurred at the manufacturing side, and that's information is generally stays within that silo. There's information that's created then by the third-party logistics providers as products move through the system. So one of the challenges is how do we bring that information together, and how do we move from a manual process that requires a scanner to scan a barcode to gather that information and bring it in and get aggregated. So what Tag and Track is solving is by getting a tag or label attached at the box, item, or pallet level at the start of manufacturing. It can then have this active tag go throughout the supply chain and provide data end to end. So you move from a silo, heavily manual process of data aggregation to a end-to-end view through active tags and labels.
Cool. So we talked a lot about intelligent technologies, catching up with technology. So is the technology of today helping the Tag and Track solution better than perhaps it may have done a few years ago?
It has, and it's coming in different means. Everyone's aware of what's developing with 5G and with the improvement in data coming through the communication networks, but also from purely the hardware. When you look at the tag and the label itself, the form factor has adjusted to the point where we can get sensors embedded in tags as small as a stamp, and in labels now that are loaded with information sensors that are the size of business cards. So that ability to produce at that level in quantity, you get to a cost factor that allows you to now reach tracking product that maybe you weren't able to do previously.
Okay, cool. And what role is there for the manufacturer then in terms of the solution?
Yeah, so the manufacturer kind of steps in two key areas. First, it's that identification of what level of value warrants tracking. And not every product's going to be the same. And you may have items that just don't cost enough to warrant detailed tracking all the way through the supply chain. So maybe the decision is we'll add value at the case level or at the box level, or maybe we'll add it at the pallet. So first of all is identify where's the value, and when that's aggregated, then apply the hardware at that point. And then the second point is then determining how to process the aggregated data, and that's where SAP comes involved, where the details that can be set up on that end in terms of pulling item, box, and pallet together. That combined with then the data that's coming off of the tag or label that's attached at the appropriate level, as that goes through the supply chain, and you get the aggregated data. So the manufacturer makes the process aggregation decision, as well as where the value can be applied.
Okay, and maybe to bring it to life for us, could you give an example of maybe an industry where you see this solution being used?
Sure, we're working with the pharma industry, as many know. It's always been very focused on on the cold chain, working through getting product to meet regulatory requirements from end to end. Recent challenges with vaccine distribution have just added the importance to improving that process. So one of the challenges that pharma has, similar to what was mentioned before, is you'd get QR codes put on potentially at the manufacturer side. You'd get, when the product reaches a third-party logistic provider, warehouse, or transport carrier, it would then get a tag potentially attached to track it during that process, and that tag would have to be returned. And generally, it's fairly sizable and costly to do that. And then there may not be any visibility on that last mile going to the final clinic or where the patient's receiving the product. So what we've been working on with the pharma industry is once again to use the single the tag and label to then be able to actively track that product, both location and condition, all the way through the process end to end. So that gets applied at the manufacturer. The aggregation occurs at the manufacturer. So as that product departs and the label's attached, then through the data platform or through SAP, you then can track the information associated with that product all the way to the end user.
Okay, cool. And I know earlier when I asked you the question on the panel, you talked a bit about the impact of sustainability, but maybe you could drill in and specifically how you see the tag and track solution enabling sustainable manufacturing.
Yeah, it's just to build off of what was said prior. One of the and it kind of ties also into, can sustainability be profitable? Because the way to impact sustainability is one to use resources in a better fashion. And the concept that Suzanne talked about in terms of shared networks, if you're able to use those shared networks to reduce your carbon footprint, you're also using that shared network to reduce your costs. So by having visibility end to end in terms of where your product is moving, what's the condition of that product, you then can start evaluating, how do you collaborate into these shared networks, and how do you manage your product in a better fashion. And it's that level of detail and ability to through a data platform to trigger notifications and alerts when things are either being disrupted or conditions are not being met, which then can allow adjustments to be made, which can have a sustainable impact, whether that's improving your transportation, whether that's reducing waste of product or waste of production, or just generally meeting the needs of the human rights and making sure that it's going through a compliant channel.
Yeah, okay, cool. So if you could, it's probably really difficult to answer this, but if you could identify how a manufacturing organization how they can go about adopting the technology, what would be the 1, 2, 3 steps that you might think or recommend?
Yeah, generally it starts with identifying a use case, and because that's the best way to bring the systems together. And so for SAP users, one of the benefits of having a partnership with Tag and Track integrated with SAP is you can then identify a use case that both that doesn't have to go through that trial of testing integration between the hardware and then the ERP. So so the best idea for anyone out there that's considering adding intelligence to their supply chain is to then look at what specific use case has right now value that's eroding, either that could be on the sustainability side or the cost side, or just purely a customer service side, and then use that to then add hardware to the process, track that through the platform, and then integrate back to SAP. So I'd say that the easiest way, identify use case, and then have a dialogue between SAP and Tag and Track to map that, and then test it. And then once it's trialed and tested, then move forward with further expansion into other avenues.
Okay, that's awesome. I mean, it's been absolutely fab to learn more about Tag and Track. The more I hear, the more I want to hear, the more I want to work with you guys and help our customers from benefiting on this journey as well. So I really look forward to working with you and the team. and helping our customers to understand more how they can leverage solutions like Tag and Track. So thank you again very much for your time today. I'm now super excited to introduce our SAP Experience Center. We have an Experience Center here in Singapore, which acts as the front end for our APJ customers and partners to be able to understand how these technologies, intelligent technologies, et cetera, can actually help them on their journey. And we're able to do, as you'll see in a few moments, we're able to do a virtual tour, and we're also able to take people physically now that the COVID restrictions are going away. So we're able to take people on a digital innovation journey. And really, it's a super opportunity now in the next few minutes for you to learn more about what it is we're doing at the Experience Center, how you can leverage that capability. And Nishan's going to take us on yet another journey, a virtual tour around the Experience Center. And she's going to show us a little bit of a showcase and a demo touching on some of the capabilities and technologies that we've mentioned here. I'll see you all at the end of Nishan's session. So over to you, Nishan.
Thanks so much, Malaki. I'm so excited to be here, and thank you for that wonderful introduction. We couldn't do it any better. Hi, everyone. My name is Nishan. I'm the Experience Curator at the SAP Experience Center Singapore. And as Malaki rightfully put it, we are kind of like the front end of SAP. So here at the center, we showcase SAP solutions for customers in both physical and virtual tours. So customers come down to the center, we show them demos, we tell them more about our solutions, or we do it virtually, just like how I'm doing it for you today. So Industry 4.0 is a huge, huge, huge focus for us here in the Experience Center. Half our floor is dedicated to Industry 4.0 solutions across the design to operate and design to consume chains. So Malaki has already spoken a little bit about design to operate, design to consume, which I won't really go into, but you see this diagram behind me illustrates that for you. We start with planning, manufacturing, then delivering and consuming, and finally, actually we start with the design phase, not the plan phase. So we have solutions showcasing this entire flow, and you're more than welcome to come down for a physical and virtual tour if you'd like. So with that, I'm actually going to start on the demo that I'm going to present today. So we're actually presenting the Asset Manager demo. And in this demo, you will see how an SAP solution, i.e. SAP Asset Manager, can support field technicians through their day-to-day work, as well as ensure their safety and support them as they are trying to optimize asset utilization. Now, I will also add, because we've covered a lot of things about sustainability today, but assets that operate efficiently consume less energy and are therefore more sustainable. Also, sustainable workplaces are workplaces that are safe and healthy for their employees to be operating in. So this is just one example of how we embed sustainability in our different solutions. So we don't seek to offer a tokenistic representation of sustainability. Instead, we try to embed it in all our operations and activities, and that involves also the demos that we give. So I'm going to start with the SAP Asset Manager demo. Give me a second while I set it up. Okay, I'm going to share my screen. And I hope everyone can see my screen. Please let me know if you can't. I think that's all good. Let me also make this a bit bigger so it's a bit clearer. So I'm a field technician. I'm going to step into the shoes of a field technician, and I've just started my shift for the day. I received my iPad that has SAP Asset Manager app on it, and I'm going to sign in. So my name is David now. I'm signing in as David, and I'm greeted by this dashboard. So there's a lot of information here, but don't worry, I'm going to break it down for you. At the top, I see a map, and we'll go into this in more detail later on. Below that, I see my favorite work orders for the day, i.e. the ones that are most important. I see information about my labor time, as well as shortcuts to things like work orders, equipment, notifications, reminders, and so on. So I'm going to start with the map. This is a map of the building or facility, plant, factory I work in, whatever that space is. And I can see my different work orders scattered around this area. The important ones are highlighted with that red icon that has a white exclamation mark in it. And if you can see towards the center top of the screen, there is an icon with a pair of headphones on it. And what this means is that the noise level in this area is too dangerous for human hearing. If I were to enter this area, I would probably have to wear the appropriate hearing protection to protect myself. So over here, I'm not just seeing my different work orders around the factory, I'm also receiving important information that can keep me safe as I go about doing my day-to-day job. This map over here is also especially useful if I operate in a really large space, as you will come to see. So I'm going to start with my first work order. I click on low pressure in asset, and I see this, and I can find directions leading me to my work order, showing me the most efficient route there. If I just click on directions, it's just like Google Maps. I see directions to walk to my work order. So again, very useful if I'm working in a very large facility. I don't have to spend ages walking around hunting for my work orders. I can use this tool to find out where they are in the factory. Again, on worker safety, if you can see on the left-hand side of the screen towards the bottom, there's an alert telling me that oil has spilled on the floor and I should probably be careful or avoid this if I can. So that's for navigating my way around the space. Now I'm going to go into my work order, going to click on it, and I arrive at this dashboard. So this dashboard gives me a variety of information. First of all, I see suggestions for what I should do to solve the problem. In this case, there is a pressure drop in an asset, and it's asking me to analyze the source of this pressure drop. It's also suggesting I ask my co-pilot, someone who has recently solved a similar issue. I also see notes on how to operate this asset. And again, with the worker safety, faulty assets can be dangerous, and it's important that field technicians know how to operate them in a manner that's safe and that doesn't further hurt the asset. I can also find a pre-service checklist that will guide me as I go about diagnosing and repairing the problem, as well as more information about the equipment coming from sensors in the equipment. So now is a good time for me to actually show you this asset in question. It's actually this white box behind me. And this is meant to simulate a pump in a factory, but this can really be anything. This can be a battery in an electric vehicle. This can be a wind turbine. It can be any asset. And in this case, it's a pump in a factory and it's been equipped with sensors. Now, these sensors are sensing a variety of things. So they're sensing the vibration within this asset, as well as the motor voltage and the pressure. Now, it has detected a low pressure in this asset, which at the moment is not a problem. But if we were to leave this unattended, that would probably worsen the machine fault and result in a significant amount of downtime. So this is what we call predictive maintenance as opposed to reactive maintenance. If I repair the asset fault before it causes a significant problem, I actually optimize my asset's productivity and also save myself on a lot of downtime. So as you can see, a lot more information that I can use as I go about fixing the problem. But let's go over to one of the suggestions, and I'm going to follow the suggestions. I'm going to analyze the source of this pressure drop. Now, just watch my screen. If I hold up my iPad to this asset, it comes up with a digital twin of this asset. And we can do a variety of cool things with it. I'll show you that later. But first of all, I want to show you several things I can do to diagnose the fault. First of all, I can look at the flow in and out of the asset. So this is the flow of air. Now, noises can signify different things. an asset, or rather a piece of equipment that's working normally, will sound very different from a piece of equipment that's not. And so what I can do is actually record the sound pattern produced by this asset in order to find out what's wrong with it. I'm gonna stop that because of the sound. I can also take a heat map to gather more information. And what's happening in the background is a machine learning algorithm is running and taking all of this information into account. It's also taking into account the historical data about this asset, of which, if you remember that dashboard, we have a lot of, and it's putting all of that information together in order to make a prediction about what could be the fault and what I need to do to fix it. So if I go into components and I split the asset virtually into its different components, on the bottom left-hand side, you're seeing 3 components issue predictions. So this algorithm is predicting what could be wrong with the asset given the information that it's just received. So this can then be integrated with a procurement system so that I can procure these components quickly and efficiently. Now, another good thing about having such a tool here, this digital twin and being able to virtually take it apart is I reduce the amount of manual handling I need to do with this faulty asset. And faulty assets can be dangerous. Again, worker safety and sustainable workplace. I just have 2 more things to show you with this demo. And these center around worker safety. I'm going to click on the top. It prompts me to check my work safety status, which I'm going to check now. And remember when we saw information on the screen from sensors in the asset? Well, it's similar. So what we're seeing is similar now, but this data is actually coming from a wearable asset located inside this helmet over here. So, as you can see, so I hit the helmet by accident on the screen behind it, and it tells me that the noise threshold has been exceeded, i.e. I'm getting an alert because a shock has been recorded by the sensor in this helmet. This simulates a fall that the worker wearing it has experienced. So I, as the operations manager, would receive a similar alert. It's also detecting a few other things, head temperature. If there's an area in the factory that's far too hot and it's dangerous for a human being to be in there, I can detect it with information on the head temperature of the worker. I can also see information about his heart rate, i.e. by physical measurements, as well as on the ambient sound. So you remember there was an area in the factory where the noise level was dangerous for human hearing. If I see that my worker is in this area, as told by the ambient sound recorded here, I can take the steps and measures I need to take to ensure that they are wearing the appropriate hearing protection. Now, this is actually all for the demo that I wanted to showcase today. I will add that using Industry 4.0 technologies has a tangible benefit for many of our customers. We have seen things like an 80% improvement in uninterrupted supply of raw materials. We've also seen things like a 60% reduction in manual tasks. So these solutions can definitely bring you and your employees and customers great benefits. So I urge you to come down to the Experience Center, have a look at the various solutions here, see what could be right for you, and we're more than happy to work together to come up with a solution that works. Now, I think we've reached the end of ITAP, and I have a special guest that you may be familiar with next to me.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Nishan. I really appreciate the tour, and I hope you enjoyed it as much as I enjoy every single tour when I come in here. And we do have the opportunity, as I've said, to bring our customers here both virtually, as you've experienced today, but also more so now physically. And we'd be very keen to entertain customers here. We do that in the form of a virtual tour, but we're also open then to having a workshop to discuss the use cases in more detail and to be able to help our customers to go on a journey together. So I'd really, it just leaves it for me to say thank you to Nisha, and thank you so much for the tour. To thank everyone who's participated today, Sam and Raymond, to thank the panelists again, Susanna and Kendall and Harry and Stephen, and also thanks to Stephen for the showcase and helping us understand a bit more about the tag and track solution. Thank you very much to all of you who have joined. And of course, thank you so much for participating in the polls and for listening to the various stories. I, for one, have found it exceptionally interesting today. And I look forward to having the opportunity to sync up with all of you. We will, of course, reach out to you, and we're always here should there be any extra information we require. Thank you very much to Constellar for helping us to drive this event and drive the engagement session. It's been very enjoyable. And all remains for me is to say, take care and stay safe.